Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Vanessa Bjorkdal. I'm the creator of Tutor Chest. Tutor Chest is an educational platform that connects parents and educators, offers resources, events, and webinars. I'll be posting a link today to the Tutor Chest website. This link will take you directly to the activity needed to complete the questions for today's clock hour credits and certificate of attendance. It will also take you to a free PD opportunity for the 2022-23 school year. That's sponsored by the Department of Elementary and Literacy Education at Minnesota State, Mankato. All right, let's get started with today's teaching narrative webinar. Presenting this information is Dr. Andrew Johnson. Dr. Johnson is a professor of literacy instruction and a distinguished faculty scholar at Minnesota State University, Mankato. He's the author of over 15 books, over 15 chapters and academic articles related to literacy, learning, and the human condition. He's also the host of the podcast, The Reading Instruction Show. He specializes in literacy instruction, reading intervention, teaching writing, and advanced pedagogy. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for being here today and sharing your time and expertise with us.
Thank you, Vanessa. So nice to be here. Thank you for that introduction. And as she said, you can go to the website www.tutorchest.com, and you can find all that information right there. Today's session is on teaching narrative writing. And these ideas are from my forthcoming book in 2024, Being and Becoming Teachers of Writing. So you see many of these ideas there. You can also go to my website, teaching-reading.com, and there you will see a plethora, over 1,000 YouTubes on different topics related to reading, writing, learning, all aspects of literacy, and a link to my podcast and my LinkedIn page. So you only need to pop it there. And my podcast, The Reading Instruction Show, these are short podcasts, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, describing some aspect of teaching reading or writing. So let us start the show today. How to teach narrative writing. You'll see kind of a list of topics on today's webinar. So let us start with what is writing. Writing is expressing meaning with print. Every child and every adult can write. Absolutely. They may need more pictures than letters to write, but the very first day of school, they can create meaning with print and pictures. Every child, every adult can write. We start with that position, not of deficit. We need to teach them skills before they can write, but with the assumption of proficiency, that they can write. And notice the difference in mindset. Oh, you can't write, I need to teach you these skills. Or, you can write, let's celebrate the idea. Let's teach you the skills as you are ready for them. Every student and every adult can learn to write well if you teach the process. If you don't teach the process, how you go about it, they won't necessarily get better. You teach the process instead of just describing what the end product should look like, which was the traditional approach. This is what must be included. We teach the process of how to generate ideas, how to organize ideas, how to revise ideas, the how, not just the what, but the how. And that's what the process is. We are teaching the how. And you'll see this come up time and again today. You get better at any skill by practicing. You do not get better if you do not practice. Writers need to write every day. Doesn't need to be long. It could be 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, but they should know every day they are going to come to school and they are going to do authentic writing. Authentic writing is where you describe your ideas, your experiences. Every day they're going to do that. Just like learning to play the piano, you need to practice every day. Learning to play soccer, you need to practice to get better at it. Learning to wrestle, you need to practice every day if you want to get better at writing. So you teach the process, the how to develop the skill, the what. And this 5-step writing process has been around for about 50 years. About 50 years. So let's look at each step here. And you're teaching each step of this writing process. Step 1 is the pre-writing, generating ideas, organizing ideas, collecting data. You need to teach students how to brainstorm, don't evaluate, how to list, power writing, or have conversations. These are all specific strategies that you can and should teach. Graphic organizer, any visual representation. You can see the ideas and the relationship to other ideas. Outlines. Inductive analysis is inducing order on a field. It's looking for groups. Seeing all these ideas on the page, you put them in groups so you can describe them. And expository writing. Expose. Describing something. The essay. You read, you collect data, you take notes, observations, inquiry. These are things you do as a pre-writing activity for expository writing. Collecting data, reading critically, taking notes, how to do all these things. Drafting is the first attempt to get the ideas on the paper. The goal is just to get a bunch of words on the page. Now, this is hard to do if students have learned to associate writing with correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling. There's a place for this, but later down the line. If you're trying to do this during the drafting stage, writing becomes stymied. You cannot write well if you're not first willing to write poorly. And the draft is like a potter taking a blob of clay and putting it on the wheel. It's getting that first bunch of ideas on the page, the clay on the potter's wheel. Revising is at the heart of the writing process. Revising, revision, reviewing, seeing again, or again and again and again and again. Here is where parts are added or taken away. It's like the potter shaping the pot. And the pot is not shaped with one spin. The pot is shaped many, many times over time, where you're continually remolding, adding clay, taking clay apart. That's what happens during the revising. You're moving parts of your paper around. You're adding stuff, you're taking stuff away. A good writer knows what not to put there. A good writer is able to take stuff away and say, that doesn't belong there. And editing is step 4. Here is where you look for grammar, spelling, and punctuation errors. Now, doing step 4 during steps 1 through 3 is the best way to ruin any writing project or to stymie any writer's growth. We have limited space in short-term memory. If writers are editing or worrying about the mechanics at the pre-writing, drafting, and revising stage, the flow of ideas and the quality of writing suffers. Precious brain space that could be devoted to generating, and connecting ideas will instead be used to worry about writing and mechanics. Step 5 is the publishing and sharing. Here you share with real people. It makes the writing become real and alive. You're able to develop a sense of audience. And the best way to develop a sense of audience, to help your students develop a sense of audience, is to give them one. Sharing writing with real people is what makes it become real and alive. Your students read their work aloud. They share, they publish. They utilize some form of publication online. in the hall, some form. This is what makes it come alive. This is how you develop a sense of audience. And this is what makes writing exciting, when students are able to share their writing with other students. Now, most writing activities will be simply pre-write, write, and share, taking 2 to 10 minutes or so. And when students are doing this, I watch their fingers or their pencils. And when the energy begins to leave, I'll say, finish up the idea you're on. We'll be sharing. Take a minute, finish up the idea you're on. Some will have complete, they'll be at different stages. But I'm watching my students. And then I ask them to share in a small group. This is best. Where they're in groups of 3 to 5, they read their paper out loud. Others respond to it. Like this idea. Tell me more about that. Oh, yes, I did that. I was thinking about this. That's part of developing an audience. Or share with a partner. Turn to a partner, read your paper, or tell about your paper. Or swap papers with others and write on the paper. Or sometimes authors chair, where one person a day signs up and reads their story to the class. These are all different ways of sharing. And the drafts should be put in a file folder or a box on the shelf, someplace other than the students' desks. If drafts are in their desks, they'll become lost. Now, I always have my students put it in a file folder in a box someplace like this. And I do this with elementary kids and my students, my college students at Minnesota State University, Mankato. Absolutely. Then I'm able to go through every day, look at 3 to 4 or 5 of these, and I'm able to monitor students' writing progress. When it's time for writing class and they are going to revise, I will say, okay, pick a paper from your folder and we'll be doing the revise and we'll be working on Writer's Workshop today. So drafts are kept in a box someplace other than the desk, on a shelf or a file folder someplace. Now, Donald Graves said that only about 1 out of 5 drafts are hot topics, meaning most of your writing activities are pre-write, write, and share. And of these, only about 1 out of 5 will students want to actually revise. It's okay to write and have ideas that don't go place. We all do that. I'm a real writer. I sometimes start articles and it's not working. And I have the ability to say, I don't think so. So choice means choice of topics, but choice also means choice of which drafts we want to revise. And the joy of sharing is that over time, sharing real thoughts enables understanding and develops a sense of community. As real human beings are sharing real ideas. And as I said before, daily writing practice is needed, just like tennis practice and choir practice. You get better at practice. You don't get better at anything by not practicing. And one of the ideas that you will see today reinforced is the idea that encountering ideas begets more ideas. That's an important part of writing and creating. Our brain has been hardwired. It evolves to associate, to create links. When I hear the word cat, my brain automatically associates. It connects to cat things. I see cat adjectives, cat words, pets, furry, cat food, my own cats. Encountering ideas begets more ideas. The goal of many of these activities is to get a lot of ideas out, to see the ideas on the page so you can begin connecting to other ideas. So there are 6 types of writing that should be in a writing curriculum, a K-12 writing curriculum. Traditionally, we only focus on the first 3, but that's 3 short. Persuasive writing, used to make an argument or a case for something. Narrative writing, we're looking at that today. I'll define it in a minute. Expository writing, used to explain, describe, provide information, communicate knowledge. Inquiry writing, used in the inquiry or the scientific process. There's a specific type of writing when you're describing an experiment or a survey or an observation. The arts, touch on that briefly today, and then communication, personal communication. All of these should be included in a K-12 writing curriculum. Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start by defining our terms. Narrative writing is a description of events or experiences in which the writer is a narrator, hence the term narrative writing. And these events or experiences can be real or imagined. Now, here are some of the types of narrative writing: biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, personal narratives, stories, realistic and historical fiction, news reporting. We'll be looking at some of these today. But the goal is to create a movie in the head, to make it come to life. So this type of writing uses adjectives, dialogue, similes, metaphors, sequence of events. Expository writing doesn't. Persuasive writing usually doesn't. That's the difference between this genre of writing. Now, an important thing to include, and you decide at what age you're going to delve into this. This certainly wouldn't be in first or second grade. In the early grades, we want students to use first-person point of view. But point of view describes who will be telling the story or describing the events. Will it be a particular person? Will it be a faceless, objective voice hovering in space? Will it be a writer? From whose point of view will the story be told? The point of view determines the types of pronouns used. Now, a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun. Polly runs fast. Polly is a great soccer player. She takes the place of Polly. She is the pronoun there. Takes the place of a noun. First person, writing in the first person, you're describing events through your eyes, the I, me, we, us pronoun. This can establish a stronger connection with your reader. But what's lost is the sense of objectivity. Describing events through your eyes, thus they're filtered through your biases and your experiences. When I am teaching writing, I give my students plenty of thinking time. I spent the first 28 years of my writing life hiding behind my third-person voice like a timid little mouse. When I could finally bring myself into my writing, I felt liberated through my eyes. That's the first person. And as I intimated earlier, beginning writers should use the first person narrative to describe their experiences and events as they are learning to describe things. Second person, often used when describing how to do something or to explain things. The writer breaks through the wall of objectivity slightly and addresses the reader directly using you and your pronouns. When you are teaching writing, give your students plenty of thinking time. You will find that this is the point of view used most often in this book. If you were encountering the little bald man in his office, you'd see him joyfully writing in the first person. You see this occasionally in narrative writing, where they say you, bringing the reader into the story or the writing somehow. And the third person, the writer tries to take him or herself completely out of the writing. Personal pronouns are used. If they're used, it's she, he, her, him, they, them, out there. Used with biographies, sometimes fiction, and news stories. When teaching writing, give students sufficient thinking time. No pronouns there. The professor was writing in the first person. This made him happy. One pronoun there. You get the idea. So you see, first person, your eyes. Second person, you include the reader. Third person, about others, totally objective. And you see the types of writing there. All right, moving on. 6 types of narrative writing. The first type is biography, describing or narrating the lives of other people, often written in third person, usually involves some sort of research and accuracy and chronology. Things happening in a specific timeline are important here. Biography, most of us are familiar with that. Same with the autobiography, the writer describing his or her life, usually written in the first person, often presented in chronological order. Here, adjectives and dialogues, metaphors and similes are used to make the work come to life and to keep the reader engaged. The personal narrative, similar to an autobiography, the personal narrative describes events that have happened to the writer. Instead of a complete lifetime, singular events or short spans are described, usually written in the first person, often including dialogue, rich descriptions of people. The memoir, memories from a person's life, memories of episodes in the writer's life, usually used with older students. Written in first person, they are an interpretation of life events. They don't have to be in chronological order. They don't even have to be accurate or factual. The writer is free to interpret his or her memories, an interpretation of their memories. And creative writing can include a variety of genres: fantasy, creative fiction, historical fiction, rich descriptions of people and places. You're creating that movie in the head, dialogue, metaphors. The purpose is used to entertain, to inform, to inspire. Often written in first person, but doesn't have to be. And news stories, information about events that have occurred or are occurring, you're narrating, often told in narrative form. That's why they are included here. Accuracy, chronology, precision of word choice, these are all important here and usually written in the objective third person narrative. So why? What's the big picture here? In our real lives, most will never have a need for narrative writing outside an educational setting. Unless we're famous people, novelists, obituary writers, or screenwriters, most of us will never have a need to use most forms of narrative writing in our real world adult lives. In my 64 years on this planet, I've never been asked to write a biography or an autobiography, a memoir, personal narrative, or any form of creative writing outside a school environment. Most of us will never have to use the skills associated with narrative writing. In my adult life, I've never been asked to go back and add more detail or colorful language to a report. I've never been asked to include dialogue or metaphors in any of my journal articles I've written. I have yet to get an email return because it didn't include an introduction that captured the reader's attention. And my technical writing, my memos, academic books, business writings have never been rejected because the endings were lackluster and disappointing. So why am I addressing narrative writing here? What's the point? Well, this is the point. It's the process. The 5-step process is germane to any type of writing. The same processes used for narrative writing are also used for writing reports and articles and any type of professional writing. Once students learn the process, it can be transferred to any type of writing product. Also, students are able to see the impact of individual words on the reader. This enables writers to become more precise with their word selection, and more skilled about word choice and sentence construction. This transfers to any type of writing product. Develops this precision of word choice. And it enhances the art in language arts. It puts the art back in language arts. And why do we have art of any kind? The arts are a way of seeing and being in the world. The arts communicate things that descriptions cannot. The arts enhance our lives. It helps us. They help us understand ourselves and others. And the arts communicate in ways that non-arts cannot. I like to say that the arts creep into the small, narrow corners of the soul. It expresses things in ways that linear descriptions cannot. And narrative writing humanizes learning. Biographies can be used to enhance learning in all subject areas. Humans learn best through stories. Students are far more motivated to write and read narrative text. And again, the process transfers to any type of writing. But humans like to write stories. Humans tend to like to read stories. We go to movies to see stories, to be entertained. And finally, narrative writing helps us understand ourselves and others. Part of identity formation. Autobiographies can be used to better understand oneself and others. When we read them, we see oneself in a greater context. Used for facilitating identity formation as well. All right, let's get some specific strategies first for biographies. And the first is called the Oprah interview. For a biography, the writer does research on a particular person and takes on the persona of that person, and an interview is conducted, very much like a guest on a TV interview show. So another student then takes on the Oprah role, the interviewer role, and asks questions and follow-up questions. So the interviewer prepares a set of questions beforehand and asks them of the guest, who is the writer. Now, if the guest doesn't know the answer, that student is encouraged to think in terms of that person and use their knowledge of that person to respond to that person. That is the Oprah interview. The second activity for biographies is called the hot seat or the press conference. Again, a biography, you do the research on a person, a volunteer sits in the hot seat or gives the press conference in front of the class. The writer takes on the persona of their biography subjects, answers questions, and if that person, again, doesn't know the answer, takes on the persona, uses their knowledge to answer as best they can. And the third activity is dialogue of a famous person or another person. And this is best done in pairs initially to create the dialogue. Creating dialogue is best when you actually have the conversation with another person. Write down the conversation, write it out. And it's okay to be silly with this. Andy, you silly little bald man, why are you including me in this ridiculous book of yours? I always thought you were an interesting character. Interesting? What makes you think I was interesting? Well, you were the second president of the United States. Yes, I know that, but I lost my re-election to that detestable Thomas Jefferson. You get the idea here. You want to encourage students to have fun with these, even if they get a little bit silly. They're still rooted in historical fact and use the 5-step writing process. This can be a fun and interesting way to learn about history and current events, and at the same time practicing writing skills. And the fourth and last one for biographies is the simulated journal entry. Here again, the writer takes on the role of their biography subject, and they're asked to create journal entries describing events, from the point of view of their writing subject, their biography subject. Activities for the personal narrative, which are usually written in the first person. Another character's perspective. Here, the student describes an event or episode from their lives, but written from the perspective of another person or character, using first person for that character. So if I'm writing about an event from Andy's life, I describe it from the perspective of another person describing Andy. Interesting way to learn about perspective as well. I did this one with my class. It actually worked out better than I thought. Students describe an event or episode from their lives using objective third-person narrative. Future self, starting at some point in the future, 1, 5, 10 years. Students describe episodes and events from an imaginary future life. And again, you think these might be silly, and that's okay. We learn the process, the writing process, and that transfers to any type of writing. These are also ways to learn about ourselves, this type of writing. Past self. Students go back in time to describe events or episodes with a different ending. And then the parallel universe, where you describe events or episodes using creative writing to insert imaginary characters and fictitious events. And it's okay to have fun with these, to be silly with these. Again, the process used transfers to any type of writing. All right, 15 scaffolds for narrative writing. Scaffolds are temporary structures designed to become obsolete, temporary structures, just like a building. They're used for writers when they're learning this form of writing, but they're not meant to be eternal entities. The form should never become more important than the function. So you have to take care that the scaffold does not become synonymous with the form. An example of a scaffold is the 5-paragraph essay. That's a scaffold. Too much emphasis is given on the form. It can get in the way with the function or describing ideas. And if you go to tutorchess.com, www.tutorchess.com, you will see the graphic organizers and steps for these 15 scaffolds that you can use. And the idea, again, that ideas always beget more ideas. So the scaffolds are designed to generate ideas, but to see the ideas, to organize the ideas. And as you see these ideas laid out in front of you, you automatically connect and associate. And lots of ideas make writing easier. And with everything, adopt and adapt. Adopt and adapt. So the first one is a timeline, very low-tech type of graphic organizer. You simply list events on a horizontal timeline. This can be used with any type of narrative writing, and characters often emerge out of these events. Very low-tech. Cartoon boxes can be used with younger students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but with older students too, who like a movie scene, they like to lay out the movie and the scenes, and you have drawings. You can try it with older students. 3 to 5 cartoon boxes. They draw first and then they describe the picture using temporary spelling, or they have an adult come and help them with the story or what they want to say. Cartoon boxes. Draw first and then write. Try it with older students, see how it works. The vocabulary strategy is taken a strategy based on the work of Graham and Harris. Sometimes you have a story idea, but you don't know where the good idea might go. So this vocabulary strategy can be used with any type of writing activity. Here you generate words, just the words, and that's used as a scaffold. That becomes a pre-writing activity. You have the story idea, and you generate just verbs, action verbs that you think of, and describing words, adjectives. And out of here, story ideas begin to appear, and you write your draft of your story. Vocabulary strategy, just single words. And here are the steps: story idea, generate action verbs, describing words, draft, and then go and revise. Events, character strategy. You list events, but they aren't linear. Characters often arise out of that. So you start with a story idea. As you think of your story, event, description, you have characters that can arise. Got out of the way here, sorry. Got out of order. So this is like the timeline, except it's not linear, events of any type. And let the characters arise out of that. And then use that to write your draft. Sorry, I got a little out of order there. All right? Events, character strategy. Story idea, simply list events that you want to have happen or have happened. And there's the steps. And you go to tutorchess.com, you can get these steps and that graphic organizer. Beginning, middle, end. You begin to think of your story in stages. You see the story as a whole, or having a beginning, a problem of some sort, a resolution, and then the ending. Story idea, characters, events that will happen in the beginning, characters, things that happen in the beginning, middle, end. You see your story holistically. That's used to create your draft. And then you go back and revise. Problemizer. Most stories have a problem or are based on a problem. So you have some characters, you have a problem of one of the characters, and this is used when you have a solution already. And you list the steps. So you identify characters, identify a problem, identify a solution to the problem, list the steps, write your draft. Problem, solution, steps to solving, use your draft. Problemizer. Stories usually involve a problem of some sort. Means end analysis. A problem can be defined as a difference between the beginning state and the ideal state, the current state and the idealized state. To solve the problem, you simply move from beginning to end. So, identify the beginning state, identify the ending state or the desired state, generate a list of conditions that need to occur to move from beginning to ending, and use that to write your draft. Beginning state, ending state, things that need to happen, write your draft. Scaffold, temporary structure. Creative problem solving, same thing. Common problem solving strategy where you want to generate a lot of ideas. Identify a problem, generate a lot of ideas without evaluating, that's the brainstorming. Select the best or most interesting solution, elaborate and refine, and this is used then to create your draft. It's a graphic organizer used to create the draft. Basic story grammar. Characters, events, and setting. And again, it helps you think in terms of the whole. You've got your story idea. You may want to describe a couple events, describe a character, and the settings. Characters, if they're older students, I like them to list at least 2 words related to their characters. It adds a little depth and dimension. Generate actions or events, and settings you'd like the story to take place. And then you use that to write your draft. Scene writing. This can be written after the draft to add descriptive elements. And you see this. Imagine a place or setting within your story for a particular event. Think about what you see there. Who you see, the kinds of people and things, what do they look like, adjectives. What are some of the actions taking place? It could be in the background. What sounds are heard? Adjectives used to describe what you see here. You might smell, emotions, textures. Then use this to write your description. You may not use all the ideas, but this adds depth and dimension. This would be used for older writers there. For a C, are you going to use all of these? No. Pick one or two that seem to work with you. Always adopt and adapt. Metaphorser. The purpose is to get more descriptive language into narration, and you're teaching metaphors and similes. So you write a draft first. Out of your draft, you find interesting things or events, and a thing or event is listed there on the left. And in the right, you record associations. Things that you think of are related to, are connected to that thing or event. And ideas always beget more ideas. As you see them, others begin to pop up. Underneath, create a metaphor for that thing or event, and then insert in your story during the revision stage. That is the metaphorser. Metaphorser. Adjectivizer. Create more purposeful, colorful language and teach the power of words and adjectives. Use one of these charts as a pre-writing activity that we've already talked about, so you'll write your draft. Then you find interesting people, places, or things, one each there. And then describing words on the right. You're listing adjectives that describe the person, place, or thing. Then you go back and insert these during the revision stage. This is a way to get describing words, colorful words into the draft. You create the draft first, and then you look for ways to create adjectives. Dialoguer. This makes the characters come to life. You record what students say. And also the between dialogue things, that's the actions, movements, the inner thoughts, that's the I, and outer actions. For example, you write your first draft. You identify two or more people from the story. And then you let the conversation occur between A and B, character A and character B. And sometimes I like students to work in pairs and actually have a conversation and record that conversation. But you're including the inner thoughts as well as the physical movements and reactions or actions that might be taking place. Then you insert the dialogue into the revision stage. And all of it doesn't have to appear in your final product, but this adds depth and dimension. And you repeat as necessary. Two characters, inner thoughts, emotions, outer actions taking place. Newsograph for narrative writing. You capture the story first, what you think happened. Then you look for the details, who, where, when, how, why. You go back and insert that into the news story. So you generate, you try to capture the idea first, and then you look for particulars. And the last, there you see the describe what happened, identify. The last one is prime the pump. You get this is used to get the ideas flowing. And the old pumps, hand pumps, you had to pour water in to prime it to get more water to come up. Here you read a short passage that you have written ideally. Students listen to the story. You say, as you're listening, think about things that you think of, what you associate. And I've used this with first grade through graduate school. Students note the memories that are triggered. They pick one idea to describe. And ideas always beget more ideas. Final words. You teach the process to develop the skill, the 5-step writing process. Include the 6 types of writing: persuasive, narrative, expository, inquiry, the arts, communication. 6 types of narrative writing. You see them there. Process used for narrative writing transfers. Scaffolds are temporary structures. Form should never be more important than function. Always adopt and adapt. If you want these scaffolds and steps, go to tutorchest.com, one word, tutor chest.com, or else teaching-reading.com. I am Dr. Andy Johnson from Minnesota State University. Hope this has been of use to you.